Chapter 12 of Tractate Kesubos discusses some additional laws on the marriage contract and the obligations between a husband and wife. The first Mishnah says if somebody marries a woman and they agree that the husband will feed her daughter from her last marriage for 5 years, he must do so. If they divorce and she marries somebody else and they remake the same deal, the first husband must still feed the daughter for 5 years and must bring it to her. The two husbands also can't split the cost of the food. Each must fully supply the food in full. If the girl eventually marries, the husband provides her with food, and each of the stepfathers must also continue giving her food. If they die, their daughters are fed from unencumbered property, while this stepdaughter is fed from encumbered property, as she's legally considered to be similar to a creditor. It was advised that when originally making such a deal to agree to feed the daughter, so long as they're still married, to prevent some situations like this. The Gemara discusses a related case. If somebody tells another that he owes him money, there's debate if he must pay. If he did this through an unsigned note, as it's debated if such a note is sufficient to create indebtedness. It tries to prove from our Mishnah that such a person would be liable, as the case would be with a similarly unsigned document, but we say no, our case is with documents of allotment, which are legally valid, so can't be used as a proof. It further debates the argument from other sources, and the remaining points are discussed. It also cites some relevant cases. New Mishnah, if a widow said to her husband's heirs that she couldn't bear to leave her husband's house, they can't tell her to leave, and that they'll support her. They must support her there and give lodging in accordance with her status. If the woman said she couldn't bear to leave her father's house, the heirs can say she'll be supported only if she lives with them. If she argues that it's inappropriate for her to stay with them, as she's a young woman and they're young men, they must support her where she is, even if it's her father's house. The Gemara further qualifies these points and discusses other things on the passing of the sage Rebbe, that he requested not to be eulogized in the towns, and many other points which are related. There's further discussion on a number of other sages. There are additional points on the passing of the sage Rebbe. He was extremely ill, but the sages kept praying for him so he wouldn't pass, and his maidservant, feeling bad for him, threw a vessel off the roof, causing the praying sages to stop for a moment and allowing Rebbe to pass on. There's further discussion on this. New Mishnah, if the widow is staying at her father's house, she collects her Kesubos whenever she wants. If she's at her husband's house, she can only collect it until 25 years, during which she'll have done many favors to the heirs, thereby repaying her Kesubos. Others say it's the inverse. She can collect her Kesubos whenever she wants from her husband's house and within 25 years from her father's house. If she dies, her heirs must bring up her Kesubos within 25 years, otherwise they forfeit their rights to it. The Gemara says that the 25 years are adjusted depending on the wealth of the widow. Further, the debt is considered legally forgiven right at sunset on the 25th, which is how many of such concepts work. It's also said the woman can collect her Kesubos whenever she wants, if she has the actual document, but others disagree, keeping the 25-year limit anyways. It's debated. This is further discussed along with some related incidents, and that's the end of Chapter 12. Chapter 13, the final chapter of Tractate Kesubos, covers some final additional laws of the marriage contract. The first Mishnah says there were 2 judges of decrees in Jerusalem. The first made 2 rulings which were contested, the first of which were that if somebody went overseas and his wife demands support, she needs to swear to claim her marriage contract, but not to claim this support. Others disagreed, saying she needs to swear by both, but it's debated between sages. The Gemara defines who these judges were, and what their jobs were, and how they were paid. It also speaks on how wrong it is to accept bribes and related verses. These points are discussed. It says a judge who borrows things without having anything to lend cannot be a judge. It said a judge shouldn't judge a person he likes or dislikes, and there are related points. It says you shouldn't even accept a bribe of words, which is somebody speaking politely to you or doing a small favor for you, and there are instances of sages who are judges having small favors done for them and then choosing to not judge those people out of concern of being biased, and examples of them not accepting gifts from individuals for the same reason. There's further discussion on this topic. It also discusses uses of the excess temple funds, different opinions as to where the different funds were spent, which was more lengthily discussed in Tractate Shkolim. There's further points on the above discussion. The original topic is debated, and it's ruled that we do give support to the wife of an absent husband. It's also ruled that a woman is legally allowed to refuse to work and still be supported by her husband. It also rules that by purging earthenware vessels to make them kosher, it can be done by black and white earthenware vessels, but not by green ones, which have absorbing qualities due to their high alum content, and if the vessels have cracks, they're all forbidden. New Mishnah, the second of the contested rulings from the first judge, was that if somebody went overseas and somebody else supported his wife, the second man is not reimbursed. Others disagree and say he swears how much he spent, and he collects it back. It's debated between sages. The Gemara further debates this point. New Mishnah, the other judge made 7 contested rulings. The first was if somebody dies leaving behind sons and daughters, if he has lots of property, his sons and daughters are supported. If he doesn't, then he supports only his daughters. Others disagreed. The Gemara says they argue, saying if men inherit when there's lots of property, why should they not when there's less? New Mishnah, the second contested ruling, if somebody claims jugs of oil from somebody, and the man said he owed empty jugs, as he admitted he owed something, he must swear this. Others disagree, saying the partial admission is not considered to be a full claim. The Gemara explains the debate is based off the wording, if he's including the actual jugs along with the oil, which is qualified. New Mishnah, the third contested ruling, if somebody promised his son-in-law money in his dowry and then refuses, the bride can tell the groom to either marry her or not, and to not make her wait based on her father. The Gemara explains this case and says, by these two contested rulings of the first judge, we hold like him, and by the first three contested rulings of the second judge, that's what we hold like, and not by the last four rulings. New Mishnah, the fourth contested ruling, if somebody challenges the ownership of a field but is signed as a witness on the deed that records the sale, he can still argue that he only signed the sale as a witness between those two. However, he actually owned the property, and he did the sale because the first man who owned it was tough, and it would be difficult to get his land back from him, so he had it sold to somebody else so that way he could now get it from this guy. Others say he's lost it now that he's signed its sale as a witness. Also, if he used this field as a boundary mark in the sale of a neighboring field, he's lost his rights to the field. The Gemara further discusses the point and qualifies it. The New Mishnah, the fifth contested ruling, if somebody returns from overseas and he finds the path to his field is lost, he can take the shortest path. Others say he should either buy a path at whatever its cost, or he should just fly across to his field or something. The Gemara further explains the logic of these cases and some related ones. New Mishnah, the sixth contested ruling, if somebody brings out a note of indebtedness against somebody and the other man brings out a deed of sale of a field and can claim, if I was in your debt, you should have taken it out of this field sale. Others disagree, saying maybe he sold him the field so he could collect it from the loan. The Gemara explains that the argument is where they write the deed first and then give the money in that location. So the first opinion says if the field was sold as security, he should have said so before. The others would disagree, as they say the purchaser would have eventually found out about it from other people anyways. We mentioned the last of the seven contested rulings. If two people produce notes of indebtedness against each other, the second could say, how am I in your debt if you borrowed from me? Others say that they must collect the debt from each other. The Gemara says if you do this, they can just keep the money as they have it, if it'll fill out each other's debts. If it's a seizure of land property, if they own average and inferior land, it's debated if they swap the land, as they judge the land in relation to what they have, so they'll end up collecting different land. While others say they collect in relation to what the world considers to be good land, so they'll just end up swapping the same land, so they just keep what they have. Those are the discussion on these points. New Mishnah, in regards to marriage, there are three regions: Judea, Transjordan, and Galilee. You can't require your wife to move with you to a town or city in between regions, but you can if it's within a region. You can't have her move from a town to a city or a city to a town. You can have her move from a bad dwelling to a good one, but not vice versa. Others say you can't even make her move to the good dwelling, as it could be bad for her health. The Gemara says the issue with moving from city to town is as towns have less commodities, and the issue with moving to a city is based on a verse. It discusses the illness from moving to a good dwelling. Some say it's from a change of routine. It's discussed. New Mishnah, a person can require his household to move to Israel, but he can't make them leave. He can force them to move to Jerusalem, but he can't make them leave. This applies by men and women. If somebody marries and divorces a woman in Israel, he pays the Kesubos in coins of Israel. If he married her in Israel and divorced her in Cappadocia, he pays her in coins of Israel. If he married her in Cappadocia and divorced her in Israel, some say you pay with Israel coins, some say with Cappadocia coins. If you marry and divorce in Cappadocia, you pay with Cappadocia coins. The Gemara says even servants can be made to move to Israel. Others say you can even move there from a good dwelling to a bad one. Those points are further discussed along with similarly related topics. A debate based on verses if we're allowed to immigrate from Babylonia back to Israel. There are related points on this, and it talks about how great the men of Israel are and how great the land is in regards to a number of topics, like in regards to the resurrection of the dead, and it says that those in Israel will rise and everybody else will have to roll there through tunnels before being resurrected in Israel, which is why Yaakov, the forefather, wanted to be buried specifically in Israel. And further discusses many of the great miracles of Mashiach's coming, on the great produce of the land then, which is described in related points. It further brings points on the great fruitfulness of the land of Israel, which are discussed. It also speaks on the love of the sages towards Israel, more on the great blessings of Mashiach's coming, and it ends by saying that in the generation that Mashiach will arrive, there will be great vilification and criticism of Torah scholars, and there will be harsh decrees against the Jewish people, which will increase. It ends by citing a verse which teaches that all the barren trees of Israel will one day bear fruit. And that's the end of chapter 13 and the entire Tractate Kesubos.